I was brought up in a Christian family, so we would go to church every Sunday, and from a very young age, like, I knew that Christianity was not what I believed in. And one of the first instances which I remember was I was actually in church and we had to write a song about God, and my song was Jesus and God, Jesus and God. This is it was like a little rap. And I remember the pastor came over to me, he grabbed a piece of paper and he scribbled it out and he said, "No, Jesus is God." And it's from this moment, maybe I was about 7 years old, when I realized that Christianity is not, it's not for me. So I continued to go to church for many years, you know, because it was the closest thing that I believed in. I always believed in one God. And from the age of about 14 years old, I began to work in like a social club. It was like a working men's type club, you know, for like a lot of the English people would go there to play snooker and things like that. And I actually ended up starting to sing because I wanted to get into singing. I became a jazz singer. So from the age of about 14 onwards, I was actually a professional jazz singer, and I was still going to school. Now, my parents decided that they didn't want me to go to a local school because it was quite a white area, you know, there's a lot of racist people there as well. Plus the education wasn't that good in that area, so they sent me to the other side of Manchester, to Hume. And in this school, it's quite a mixed school. You have people from different backgrounds, you know, a lot of Africans there, a lot of, you know, people from the Caribbean, Asian people, different people. So there's a mixture of different nationalities and cultures and religions. So it was a good thing for me to go there. Now, from like the age of 18, and at this point, like, I was contacted by Sway. You know, he's quite a well-known rapper in London. You know, he used to be quite big, and I did a track with him, you know, where we did a mixture of like jazz and hip hop. So I was actually, you know, I was getting about doing my music, things like that, and it was my dream to be like a jazz, you know, a big jazz singer. This is what I wanted to do, and actually my career was actually doing well. You know, I was getting a lot of gigs. I was singing on cruise ships and singing in different football stadiums and venues, and it was becoming quite good. And this is really what I wanted to do. You know, I was just concentrating on doing this dream. So at the age of 18, a lot of Africans moved into my area. You know, it became quite an African area. A lot of people from West Africa, like Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and I became friends with some Sierra Leone brothers, and they were Muslim by name. You know, they you know, some of their family were Muslim, but they didn't really know much about Islam. But anyway, we began to do business, and eventually I had to travel to Africa, to Sierra Leone. We were selling cars, and I was also getting involved in studying diamonds and learning about diamonds. So this is like the path which I wanted to take, you know, because this is what my friends were doing. And it was good money, you know, it was just, you know, living the life, you know, trying to make as much money as we can, enjoying life, spending it, wasting it all away. You know, this is what we was doing. And my experience in Africa, the first country I went to was actually Senegal, in Dakar in Senegal. And it's over 90% Muslim, yeah, and this was the first time I actually heard the call to prayer, the adhan, you know, calling the Muslims to come and pray, you know, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, you know, and this sound of the actual adhan, you know, it really made me think, what is this, yeah? And it made me want to know more about Islam, you know, and at the time I was actually stuck because I was only supposed to be in Senegal for maybe 2-3 days, and I told the hotel manager, you know, because I was actually stranded there for over 2 weeks and I didn't have any money to pay for the hotel. I told the hotel manager and he said, "No problem, come to my house." The hotel manager took me to his house, and he was a Muslim. I was a bit scared to go to his house at first because, you know, I just thought Muslims are all terrorists and all the things I'd heard were all bad things. But I had no option, you know, I couldn't phone home because my parents didn't even know I was in Africa. Yeah, so, you know, I had to go to his house. I went to his house, and this is where I heard the adhan. And while I was there, his grandmother died. His grandmother passed away, and she was over 100 years old, and he was crying on the bed. And I remember putting my arm around him and saying, look, you know, she'll go to a better place, you know, just trying to comfort him. And he said, I'm not crying because she died. He said, I'm crying because I wanted you to meet her, because I wanted her to make dua for you, that you would be a Muslim. He said, because she's an old woman and Allah will answer her du'as. And this really touched me, because I thought, the guy's not even upset because she died. Yeah, he's in full belief that she's going somewhere better, which I wasn't, you know, trying to comfort him. You know, and it made me want to know more about Islam. You know, so a lot of misconceptions were cleared up there. So this was at, like, the beginning of me looking into Islam, you know, to start to look just for interest, just because I wanted to know what these Muslims believe, because they're nice people. For many years, like my friends, they would go to certain people in Sierra Leone who was dealing with witchcraft. They was dealing, you know, they have different names for it, like juju or voodoo. You know, they'd be involved in these rituals where they would be contacting the unseen world, like the jinn, for help. You know, so they ask the jinn to go and do some things for them, you know, whether it's in business or whatever they're doing for protection, you know, and they was getting involved in this. And this became very real to me, you know, I believed that the world of the jinn existed, you know, because the things I had witnessed in Africa and even in London, when I was staying with my friends in like South London, like, you know, this is happening, that I believed in it, you know. And when I came back to England, I told my Libyan friend, I told him what I'd witnessed in Africa about all this juju and these, you know, these supernatural things happening. And he said, yeah, in Islam we believe in this, but this is illegal, you know, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to communicate with these things. It's illegal in Islam. And he showed me a lecture by Dr. Bilal Phillips, which explained the world of the jinn. And this actually was the beginning of me actually maybe believing that the Quran might be from that God which I believe in. Yeah, because I've always believed in the one God. But from this point, this was when I was actually questioning, maybe the Quran is from that God, from the God that I believe in. So I started to look more into the Quran. And finally I began to believe in it, you know, start to believe in Islam, start to look into it. And I started to pray in my own way. You know, I fasted the month of Ramadan in my bedroom at home. Yeah. And it wasn't until about 6 months to a year later I went to Egypt, Cairo. I went to see a friend of mine in Cairo, and I went to the first mosque, because I'd never been in a mosque before, because I was quite scared of going in mosques. You know, again, I had a lot of misconceptions in all this. I was scared to go in the mosque. And I went to the mosque and I asked my friend, I said, can you teach me how to pray properly? And he said, no. He said, because you're not a Muslim. I said, I'm a Muslim, I pray, I fast, you know, I try. He said, no, you have to say the Shahada. You know, and I didn't know what the Shahada was. You know, I said, what's the Shahada? He said, this is a declaration of faith, you know, to declare that there's nothing worthy of worship except Allah and Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the final messenger. So this is when I actually embraced Islam, you know, officially. Back in 2006.
Okay, mashallah. Aki, can you now tell us how coming to Islam has changed your life?
Since accepting Islam, you know, it wasn't easy, you know, because I was still a singer. I was still doing, you know, things that not good, you know, undesirable things, like, you know. And it's not easy just to give all that up straight away. I mean, many people, that's it, you know, they just give it up and it's out of their life. But for me, I couldn't do it. You know, I wasn't strong enough. My belief wasn't enough just to leave that life straight away. It took a long time for me to, you know, give up my singing. The singing was the hardest thing, you know, and the music, because it was a big love of my life. But eventually, you know, I just stopped singing certain songs, stopped listening to certain music, and eventually I just found that the circles, the brothers who I was with, the friends I was keeping, you know, eventually I just gave these things up. You know, it wasn't so difficult. A big turning point in my life was that during this period of me actually, when I was, beginning to pray and I actually accepted Islam, over this period of time where I was actually transitioning from a non-Muslim, from a Jahiliyyah actually to accepting Islam, I had a court case going on, for over 2 years. It was a very stressful time for me and my family, and but alhamdulillah, I was accused of something and they all went away. The day the court case was about to take place, it all got cancelled. And I always remember, like, I was coming down the court stairs and my dad said, that was the jinn that protected you. Yeah, and my dad's a non-Muslim and he was actually on this belief, for such a long time, because he knew about the world of the jinn and he knew about some of these things. And I said, no, it was Allah. I said it was Allah, it was God what protected me, because at this point, I'd actually left these circles which I was involved in, where you're getting caught up in the wrong things, getting accused of the wrong things, and that's what happens ultimately, whether you're innocent or not. If you've got the wrong company, you're gonna get dragged into these things. So this is the importance of Islam, where you are who your friends are. So for me, over this transition period, I just backed off from certain friends, and started to spend more time in the mosque. Especially like Ramadan. We had Ramadan. Spending time with the brothers, spending a lot of time just learning. YouTube helped, there's a lot of lectures and things on there, but it's about just taking time away. You have to distance yourself from certain people and actually move on with your life, but it takes time. It wasn't easy when I first became a Muslim. My parents, they didn't like it, they was worried, they just thought I was becoming a terrorist, but now they acknowledge that I've become a better person. I've seen them been asked many times about me, and they said that I'm definitely a better person now than I was. I'm hoping that I'm a better son and a brother than I was before. But I've become more involved in the community by telling people about Islam. Actively involved in dawah, telling people about Islam, doing talks in the universities and different things like this. And I've also since gone back to Africa, because Africa, I have a big love for Africa, because it's where I first heard the adhan, it's where I first, started to understand the world, the unseen world, and it's also where I took my shahada in Egypt, you see. So I decided that I'm going to go back to Africa, and a few years ago I set up my own charity called Volunteers Sierra Leone, where we're actually now responsible for 65 Muslim schools around Sierra Leone. So now this is actually, we're in the process of preparing volunteers to actually go back to Africa and actually help the Muslims and the non-Muslims with education, because education is the key. If you look at the people what was living in my parents' area, what I was telling you about before, with this, where the education is bad. These people, none of them have been to college even, none of them have been to university. They've all, a lot of them no jobs, they don't know much about life, but because my parents sent me to quite a good school on the other side of the city, I got to experience different cultures and understand education is the key. So, it's about giving back to the community, giving back to, Africa, especially for me.
What advice have you got to Muslims and non-Muslims regarding Islam?
The advice that I'll give to non-Muslims is just open your heart and sincerely look into the religion of Islam. Read the Quran with an open heart and just see what you think. And if you do believe in a one true God, put your head on the floor when you're alone and ask that God, ask the Creator to guide you to the straight way. Put your head on the floor, submit to God and ask Him, if Islam is true, show me. And this is the advice I give to non-Muslims. For the Muslims, the advice would be that I advise the Muslims to actually study and learn more about Islam, but whatever you do know, you have to pass on. Yeah? If you know non-Muslims, if you know Muslims that are not practicing, you have to advise them to actually come back to Islam. And the other advice is to keep up with your salah. This is very important. If you've got the salah, everything else will come, inshallah. I'd just like to say Jazakallah khair. Thank you for Roadside to Islam, for inviting me on the show. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
يا حبيب الله فاكتب لنا نلقاه ندعوك يا رباه مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يا ربي صل عليه يا ربي صل عليه يا ربي صل عليه صلوات الله عليه مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يا ربي صل عليه يا ربي صل عليه يا ربي صل عليه صلوات